Let's see, everyone can share my screen. I can see my screen, I hope. Admit these people, all right. Yeah, welcome to STAT115. This course goes by many different names. I know a lot of you might come to this course with varying levels of experience. Some of you might have never even coded before, and that's okay. Well, it's not technically encouraged. So people have certainly done it in the past, and I certainly didn't have that much experience when I took this course. You just have to work a bit harder than others, and that's okay if you're up for the challenge. This first lab just serves a couple of purposes to go over some logistics. There's some things, some forms that need to be filled out to get access to the computing cluster, for instance. That's decently urgent, so I'll remind you a couple of times. Make sure to do that early on. And then, yeah, so as I said, some people may be very familiar with R and with the command line. And if that's the case, feel free to leave and watch it later if you feel that it's useful. If not, then feel free to skip this one totally. But I'm assuming no prior experience for this lab, so I'll take it slow and we'll go step by step. So I'll keep admitting people to the waiting room as we go. It's my first time TFing a course, so bear with me. And it's also like midnight my time in my time zone, so we'll stick with it. Let's go. So yeah, as I said, this week, a couple purposes. Canon is the computing cluster that we'll be using for the homework. Sometimes we'll have to deal with large data files, and it's not really fast to do it on your own little CPU on your laptop. So that's why we get experience using the computing cluster. You might see this referred to as Odyssey, because that was the name until very recently, and they just upgraded it and changed it to Canon. So they mean the same thing. Don't worry if you see them used interchangeably. We'll go over RStudio today. Hopefully you've downloaded it and installed it already. That would be quite useful. If not, I'll leave a little bit of time for you to do that. We'll go over basic commands, how to get help. We'll spend some time and do an exercise on how to manipulate data. This is actually very useful, and you'll need to do this very, very soon in the course already for homework 1. So it's quite useful to wrap your head around how to filter, summarize, group by, take the mean, and especially use the pipe operator. And then we'll go over the very basics of bash scripting. This is also something that takes quite some practice, but at least I'll show you what the basic commands are and how to navigate the command line. And we'll also point to several other resources that will be very useful as you take this course. So let's get started with some announcements first. Oh yeah, so next week my friend Philip will do lab number 2. That will be much more focused on Python, a little bit more about the computing cluster, and then homework 1 questions. So some of you might want to start homework 1 very early on. That I wouldn't recommend that necessarily unless you really know what you're doing. Usually the setting up of the computing cluster takes 1 or 2 days. So that leaves us a little later in the week, and then Philip will go over some very specific commands for homework 1. So stay tuned for that. More people in the waiting room. Okay, let's keep going. So this is really important. I know you can't click this link right now because I'm sharing my screen, but please fill in this form, ideally today, right after the lab, if you haven't already. Yeah, as I said, Canon is the new name for Odyssey. And you really need this to complete the first homework. And if you don't fill it out now, that's a bit annoying. We like to batch all the people who get access right at once. That makes it a lot easier and faster. So Nabib, are you raising your hand?
Have people already gotten access? I filled out the form like on Monday.
Yeah, no, not yet. So
okay,
we set the deadline for, I think tonight, I think we did, and then we'll submit the results to the moderator tomorrow, and then you'll give everyone access. And I'm expecting some people might be a bit late, and we'll have to get them access later, but that will delay you a little bit. So please fill it out. Edward?
Yeah, sorry, just a quick question. Is there an R markdown that we can follow along with, or is it
yes,
just
yes,
giving the presentation?
We're going to get there.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and everyone feel free to just interrupt me, please. The raising the hand thing works pretty well, but you can also just shout it out. Okay, let's keep going. Yeah, another announcement. we'll use Slack for a lot of questions about the homework. And then we hope that you and your peers can interact. The TFs can answer your questions. For better or for worse, we chose Slack. Other courses might choose Piazza or Ed, but we stuck with Slack. So yeah, please join it afterward.
Could you send the link to the chat?
Say that again, sorry.
Could you send the link of Slack to the chat?
Yeah, we'll download our markdown file later that has all these links. I think that might be a bit more useful. So why don't we get to that? I hope everyone has RStudio installed. If not, please do so. It should be quite straightforward to find. And let me go to the GitHub detour. All right, so why doesn't everyone go ahead and navigate to github.com/stat115, and you should be able to see lab 1_2021, and then yeah, go ahead.
So is Canon, like, can we do RStudio on Canon, or is Canon just like a place where we can just like what is Canon, if you can explain that?
Canon is the place where a lot of the files are stored that we'll need. So if we have a reference genome, for instance, that we'll need to map our reads to, that will be stored on Canon. And in terms of homework 1, we'll go into a little bit more of the details next week, but you certainly won't need to run RStudio on Canon. So usually what you will do is you submit a bash script to the Canon server, and that will then do the heavy computations for you. But yeah, we'll get to it in a bit more detail. So hopefully everyone can navigate to GitHub. There are several ways you can get access to the RMD, our markdown file for this lab. The most useful way that is most commonly done is to go to your terminal and then type git clone and then the link. That you should also be able to see it on the big green button on GitHub. The other way is to do download zip, or you can create your RStudio project. I wouldn't do that for now, that third option. So maybe I'll give you 1 minute to figure this out. If you're really new to this and you can't figure it out right now, you can also, go ahead. I thought somebody was interrupting me, that's all right. If you're really new to this and you can't seem to figure it out yet, you can also just copy paste the entire RMD and paste it into RStudio, but this is not recommended. Okay, I'm gonna wait just.
Where are these slides?
Yeah, so these slides were created from the R Markdown file. So it would be nice to download the R Markdown, and then you can what's called knit it. And then I've installed a package that will knit it into a HTML, which then nicely formats into slides. So
is it in files on the website, or?
Let me head over to the GitHub. So lab 2021. Should be able to find it here. And then lab 01. Are you all able to see this? It should be public. And then it's this one, lab1.rmd. But ideally, you would want to go back here and then download everything. So click here, copy this link, or download zip. So if you copy this link, you would have to go to your terminal and type git clone this if you have git installed. Otherwise, you can download the zip file. That's another way to do it. So
can you go back to the installing GitHub?
I'm sorry?
Can you go back to the previous slide on like installing GitHub or register? Yeah, that one.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks.
Sorry, may I ask a random question about homework 1? So will the lecture cover anything useful for the homework?
Yeah, so In general, yes. The answer is yes, because while you may be able to figure out how to use the read mapping software like STAR, for instance, on your own, the lecture will cover what is actually going on. So in that sense, it's really useful. So yeah, I would really attend the lectures. I find them, even rewatching them, I find them really, really useful.
Our lecture's
Sorry,
gonna be. Oh, I'll let Mark go.
how do you how do we clone it exactly? Because I don't have the clone button.
Yeah, so if you haven't cloned before, I would recommend just downloading the zip file and then you can open it. But if you I can try and open up my terminal as well. Here, let's see. Oh, you might not be able to see this, right? No.
No, we don't see it.
Yeah.
But our lecture's gonna be live. Cause like Professor Lou said that like sometimes lectures will just be recorded and then posted from last year.
Oh, okay. I think in general they should be live, but if you mentioned I couldn't attend today in class, but yeah, last year's lectures are all recorded and on YouTube, and some of them might not have changed, so she might choose to just post them then. Okay, I will.
Are they available for us?
Yes, they are. I can send everyone the link later in an announcement as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. If anyone still has questions about this, please let me know. The easiest way is just to go here and download the zip file with all the code, and then you should be able to open the lab1.rmd in RStudio, and you should be able to follow along especially if you scroll down to approximately line 120 or so, a little later, you should be exactly where I am. Yeah.
Sorry, Martin.
Yeah.
I did the git clone and then the URL in terminal, and I think it worked because it unpackaged all the objects or whatever. But where does that go? Like, how do I access that?
Yeah, so this should be in your current folder. Then you can type ls in your terminal. Then it should show you all the files in that current folder. You can also just go into Finder on your, that's what it's called on Mac, and just browse all your directories. And then so if you're in the terminal, it's always operating in a current directory, which you can see the contents of by using ls. We'll also get into this a little bit later, but yeah, let me know if you're not able to find it.
I don't see the clone or download button.
So
after clicking Lab 2021 and then Lab 1.
Yeah, just the clone or download button is for Lab 2021 folder only, because that's a repository. So just go back one step.
Oh,
yeah,
I see it.
Yeah, just let me know any questions. I think for now I will try to move on. It's not, if you haven't figured it out yet, it's not super crucial that you follow along in the R markdown, but it would be a little nice. But I'll just move on in the interest of time. But let me know if there are any more questions. So why we're using R markdown in the first place is because it's reproducible. That means you can write code in R markdown, then knit the entire file, and you're able to share it with others, and everybody should get the same document. Especially if you're doing statistical tests, for instance, statistical simulations, this is very useful. You can set a seed, is what it's called, and you will get the same numerical outcomes in R markdown. And yeah, this has made it highly used by a lot of statisticians. You will see some similarities with other programming languages like Python, but also keep in mind it was developed for data science tasks, statistical tests, all that type of all those types of analyses. And it's also widely used in bioinformatics, which is why we teach it here. So if you're able to follow along in the R markdown, you can see that there are different ways to write text and embed code chunks. You can write big, kind of big, and still biggish letters. Yeah, you can write stuff in bold by using the asterisk, or you can italicize text, and you can even add LaTeX. You won't have to do that for this class probably. And you can also add inline code. You can add images if you use an exclamation mark, and I think square brackets. And you will see in our marking, you'll see different chunks. These all can run code. And note that you can add certain parameters in the header of these chunks. So for instance, you can say echo is equal to false. And in that sense, it won't show the code chunk when you knit the report finally. There are several ways, several different parameters you could add here. One is echo, one is include. There's several others as well. Let me move on. This is neat. You can embed plots. So actually, let me back up just a little bit, because I skimmed over this before. But if you're, this is really useful to know. R is very useful, especially in bioinformatics, because there are many different packages written that can help do very useful tasks. A lot of these packages are in CRAN. That's a project. I think it's just an aggregator of many different packages. At least it has a neat functionality that you can do install.packages and then the name of the package, and it will pull the package from CRAN. You'll be able to use all of its functions. You'll only be able to use all of its functions once you load the packages into your file using library. So there's a package called New York City Flights 13 that you first can install. If you then put it in your library, you'll have access to all of its data. And if there's any functions written in it, you also have access to the functions. So this is, yeah, go ahead.
Where do you do the install.packages? Do you do that within the R Markdown file?
Yeah.
Or do you do that somewhere separately, like globally?
Yeah, so yeah, in the R Markdown file, you have, okay, I just saw a chat message. You have different chunks that you can run. Usually you might put install.packages into one of these chunks. It's hard for me to navigate to R Markdown right now, but while I'm sharing my screen, but
I guess, do you do it like for every time you make a new file? So like if I made a new R project, how do you do the install packages again?
Well, let me remember how this works. I think once you are in R Studio and you have an active session and you type install.packages New York City Flights 13, it should keep it installed. Perhaps until you terminate the R session, or maybe even after that. I don't quite recall that, but I can get back to that. But you don't have to, you usually don't have to re-put it every single time. But know that if it gives you an error like package not found or something on that order, then it's usually this is the case, that you have to do install all packages. Yeah.
Yeah, the installation is done only once, and then you can just use library to load it.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. So that's really, so only when you're just getting started, you have to install packages. Okay, let's keep going. Yeah, so you can embed plots. We'll get into what's called ggplot a little later as well. This is a neat package to create beautiful plots. But note that this is very attractive in our Studio and R Markdown, that you can just embed these plots neatly. So here, for instance, you will put ggplot in your library. We'll put dplyr, we'll get into that later as well, in your library. You take what we have here is flights data set, and we'll get into all of this later, but I'm just showing what's going on here. A pipe operator, this will say, take in the flights data set that we have here. Take that output as as input for the next operation, and you'll get to play around with all of this a little bit later. Don't worry if you don't understand it now. I'm just trying to go through this. And then it will say plot. Put the origin on the x-axis. So here we see different airport codes. And then on the y-axis, we put the arrival delay. I'm assuming this is in minutes. And it will show a box plot. And then you can add the title, and you can add all sorts of legends, titles, different axes and labels, which is very useful in ggplot. But we'll take this more step by step. Just know that using plots in R Markdown is very convenient. This is also, when you're starting out with R, this is often a source of errors and confusion. Note that if you try to load in a CSV file or a data set, for instance. This file will, you will have to specify its location with regards to where you are in your working directory. Your working directory, usually when you haven't done anything, you just open R, it will be wherever this R file is saved. But you are able to change the working directory. So if you type in get wd with the parentheses, you will see your working directory right now. And you can also change it. You have to put in a valid path here. So for me, that would be something like /user/martin/documents. But you can set it to wherever you want. But note that if you get an error, if you are sure that, say, a CSV file like New York City flights, oh, sorry, that's not a good example. New York City flights is in a package preloaded. But say you are using a CSV file, you're sure that it's in your current directory, but your R markdown is not able to find it. Then it's usually that this is the issue. You have to set the current working directory to be in line with where the CSV file is located.